the final contract signing, my boss's niece smugly said, "I've been shadowing digital strategy upstairs. This is such an honor," as she replaced me. I smiled and logged out without closing the system that only I could access. What Gregory Carrington didn't realize was that his decision to humiliate me in front of a $100 million defense contract would backfire spectacularly. He was dealing with someone with 28 years of strategic expertise, comprehensive system access, and the foresight to build safeguards they never knew existed. I'm Olivia Meyer, 54, and I had just been forced out of my position as Senior Director of Strategic Contracts at Carrington Air. I was replaced mid-signature by my CEO's 24-year-old niece, who couldn't even pronounce our client's name correctly. The cursor had been blinking on the final line of the Gateway Protocol when Gregory walked into my office without knocking. Behind him stood Chloe Carrington in powder blue designer heels, clutching a tablet like it was a trophy. She looked barely old enough to have a college degree, let alone understand the complexity of government defense contracts. "Olivia," Gregory said with artificial casualness, "this won't take long. We're initiating a leadership transition effective immediately." I straightened in my chair, glancing at the secure window still open on my monitor. The system was waiting for my biometric voice confirmation to release the final $100 million payment to Constellar Aerotech. This deal had taken 9 months of negotiations, 4 international trips, and 3 all-nighters to secure. The contract represented the largest government procurement in our company's history. "I don't understand," I said slowly. "The signing ceremony is in 2 hours. Gregory moved toward his niece. "Chloe will be taking it from here. Fresh perspectives, you know. She's been shadowing digital strategy upstairs." That's when Chloe stepped forward with her rehearsed enthusiasm. "I've been shadowing digital strategy upstairs. This is such an honor," she said brightly, extending her manicured hand. "I can't wait to bring some innovation to these legacy processes." The audacity was breathtaking. This child, who had never negotiated a contract in her life, was about to take credit for nearly a year of my strategic work. But as I looked at the blinking cursor on my screen, I realized something they didn't know. The system wouldn't accept anyone else's authorization. "Congratulations, Chloe," I said, taking her hand with a calm smile. "I hope you understand what you're walking into." I logged out of my user account, but deliberately left the Gateway Protocol open in the background. The system would continue waiting for my voice authentication, but they had no idea that obstacle existed. As I gathered my blazer and headed for the door, I felt a cold satisfaction knowing that their celebration was premature. "Security will help with the transition," Gregory called after me. "Your belongings will be sent to your residence." I walked out without another word, leaving them to discover the system they couldn't access without me. The humiliation of being replaced mid-contract was nothing compared to the strategic advantage I possessed that they couldn't comprehend. What Gregory and Chloe didn't understand was that I had spent my entire career building not just contracts, but comprehensive security systems. These systems were designed to protect Carrington from exactly this kind of corporate incompetence. 6 months earlier, our company had suffered a 0-day exploit that penetrated deep into our financial backend. While Gregory dismissed it as a routine security scare, I recognized the vulnerability it exposed in our contract execution systems. Working with our former CTO, I had designed a proprietary biometric gateway protocol, specifically for high-value government contracts. The gateway final system required 3 levels of authentication: voice identification, terminal lock verification, and geolocation matching. In practical terms, the $100 million Constellar Aerotech contract could only be executed from my original workstation, in my office, using my voice print. I had built this safeguard not out of paranoia, but from decades of experience watching corporate leadership make decisions that endangered carefully negotiated deals. My professional background provided advantages that Gregory had never bothered to understand. After graduating summa cum laude from Georgetown with dual degrees in international business and government relations, I'd spent 5 years at the Pentagon working in defense procurement before joining Carrington. My government contacts included senior officials at the Department of Defense, former colleagues who had moved into private sector compliance roles, and a network of attorneys who specialized in federal contract law. More importantly, my financial position was far more secure than my modest office suggested. 28 years of strategic contract work had resulted in substantial performance bonuses and equity stakes that had grown significantly as Carrington expanded. My personal investment portfolio was worth approximately $2 million. My Georgetown townhouse was paid off, and I maintained professional relationships with 3 of the most respected contract law firms in Washington. The morning after my dismissal, I began implementing a systematic response strategy that would expose the full extent of Gregory's miscalculation. My first call was to Patricia Hensley, a partner at Hensley & Associates who specialized in executive contract disputes. Patricia had worked with me on several complex cases involving government compliance and corporate governance. They're trying to execute a federal defense contract without proper authorization protocols, I explained during our consultation. The system I designed won't accept their attempts to override my authentication. Patricia reviewed the documentation I had brought, including the signed authorization agreement that established my control over the Gateway Final Protocol. "This is ironclad," she said. "They can't legally modify these security requirements without your written consent. More importantly, any attempt to falsify the authentication could constitute federal contract fraud." My next strategic move was contacting Marcus Levinson, the senior procurement director at Constellar Aerotech. Marcus and I had developed a professional relationship built on mutual respect and trust during the lengthy negotiation process. He deserved to know that Carrington was attempting to finalize the contract without proper internal authorization. "I'm no longer involved with the project," I told him during our confidential conversation. "But you should be aware that Carrington may attempt to submit authentication documents that don't meet the security protocols we established." Marcus was immediately concerned. "Our compliance team has been flagging inconsistencies in the final documents. Someone altered the formatting and removed several security clauses without our approval. This confirmed my suspicion that Chloe and Gregory were not just incompetent, but actively trying to circumvent the security measures that protected both companies. Their desperation to complete the signing ceremony had led them to modify contract terms without client consent. This created legal liability that could destroy Carrington's reputation in the defense sector. Over the following week, I systematically documented every attempt they made to access the Gateway Final system. Jacob Turner, a young IT analyst who had worked with me for 3 years, kept me informed about the increasing panic in the executive offices. Chloe had spent hours trying to override the biometric locks, while Gregory had demanded that the IT department simply reset the system. Without understanding that such an action would corrupt the entire contract log, the beauty of the situation was that I didn't need to do anything actively destructive. The system was working exactly as designed, protecting the contract from unauthorized access while creating a comprehensive audit trail of their failed attempts to circumvent security protocols. Every click, every failed login, every frustrated phone call was being logged as potential evidence of their incompetence. Meanwhile, I had begun exploring my own professional options. The defense contracting community was small and tightly connected, and word of Gregory's erratic behavior had spread quickly through my network. 3 different firms had already approached me about senior consulting positions. They recognized that my expertise and government connections were valuable assets that Carrington was foolishly discarding. The strategic phase of my response culminated when I received an urgent call from Marcus Levinson on a Wednesday night. His voice carried the tension of someone who had discovered a serious problem. "Olivia, I need to ask you something off the record," he said. Did you build a biometric gateway into the final contract confirmation system, one that locks execution to your specific terminal and voice print? I leaned back in my kitchen chair, savoring the moment. I did. It was authorized internally after our security breach last year. The clause is documented in version 7 of our agreement. Marcus cursed softly. They haven't told us anything about a transition. The Carrington team has been acting like the delay is a simple IT problem, but nothing is going through on their end. That's unfortunate, I said neutrally. The system was designed to prevent exactly this kind of authorization breakdown. The metadata on the contract documents they sent yesterday doesn't match what we approved, Marcus continued. Someone altered the formatting and backdated approval logs. Your security protocol flagged it as inconsistent. This was the confirmation I had been waiting for. Not only were they unable to complete the contract, but their attempts to fake the authentication had been detected by the very system designed to prevent such fraud. Constellar Aerotech now had documented evidence that Carrington was attempting to manipulate federal contract terms without proper authorization. I'm going to escalate this internally, Marcus said. If they can't provide proper authentication, we'll have to freeze the contract pending a full compliance review. After ending the call, I sat in my quiet kitchen, feeling a cold satisfaction settle over me. They had tried to erase 28 years of strategic expertise and replace me with nepotistic incompetence. Instead, they had locked themselves out of their own biggest contract while creating evidence of potential federal fraud. The consequences began cascading faster than even I had anticipated. By the next morning, Carrington's offices were in full crisis mode. Chloe had arrived before sunrise, her usual confident strut replaced by frantic pacing as she stared at error messages she couldn't understand. The executive conference room filled with panicked voices as Gregory demanded explanations from IT staff who couldn't provide solutions. Brent Harrison, the lead systems administrator, tried to explain the situation in terms Gregory could grasp. The system only accepts final authorization from Olivia's original terminal, Brent said nervously. She encrypted the gateway under a 3-factor biometric lock tied to her user profile. We can't override it without corrupting the entire contract log. Then get her back here, Gregory snapped. Whatever it takes. But it was already too late. At news broke in Aero Times, the industry's most widely read trade publication. The headline read, Carrington Air fails to execute $100 M government contract due to internal security conflict. The article detailed how a deliberately designed authentication protocol linked exclusively to a recently terminated executive had prevented contract completion. Within minutes, the story spread across LinkedIn, Twitter, and industry forums. Former Carrington employees shared the article with commentary about Gregory's poor leadership decisions. Defense industry professionals who knew my reputation expressed shock that such an experienced executive had been dismissed during an active contract negotiation. More damaging still, someone had leaked internal emails showing Chloe's failed attempts to override the security system. The leaked correspondence revealed timestamps of dozens of failed login attempts, desperate requests for IT support, and increasingly frantic messages to Gregory about the technical difficulties preventing contract completion. By noon, Carrington's stock had dropped 12%. Analysts were describing the situation as a cautionary tale about the importance of institutional knowledge and proper succession planning. Several prominent defense contractors publicly questioned whether Carrington had the internal competence to handle government contracts of this magnitude. The final blow came when Constellar Aerotech released their own press statement. Due to significant concerns regarding transparency, protocol integrity, and leadership transition mismanagement, they were terminating the $100 million procurement agreement effective immediately. The press release specifically mentioned their loss of confidence in Carrington's current direction, while praising the partnership efforts of Carrington's legacy leadership. They didn't name me directly, but everyone in the industry understood the reference. The executive they had dismissed was the same person their client had trusted to manage the relationship. From my Georgetown townhouse, I watched the news coverage with quiet satisfaction. I hadn't leaked any documents, hadn't spoken to reporters, hadn't taken any action that could be construed as sabotage. The system had simply worked as designed, protecting both companies from unauthorized contract modifications while documenting the incompetence of Gregory's chosen replacement. I received the call I had been expecting. Gregory's name appeared on my phone screen, but I let it go to voicemail. His message was predictably desperate. "Olivia, we need to meet. This situation has gotten out of hand and we need your help to resolve it." 20 minutes later, he sent a formal email requesting a meeting to discuss recent developments. No apology, no acknowledgement of how they had treated me, just a corporate request for assistance, as if I were a consultant they could hire to fix their self-created crisis. I replied with one line: "I will meet at my attorney's office at 1 p.m. tomorrow." The meeting at Patricia's law firm was brief and decisive. Gregory arrived alone, looking haggard and desperate. His usual corporate confidence had evaporated, replaced by the demeanor of a man who finally understood the magnitude of his miscalculation. "I know we made mistakes," he said, his voice cracking slightly, "but you built this company with us. We need you now." I remained calm and professional. "You didn't just remove me, Gregory. You erased me. No transition, no acknowledgement. You replaced me with your niece and told the world she had secured a deal she couldn't even understand." He tried to negotiate financial terms, offering bonuses and equity packages, but Patricia cut him off. "This isn't about compensation," she said firmly. "This is about professional integrity and proper business practices." I stood to leave, delivering the final message Gregory needed to hear. "You wanted a future without me. Now you have it." The aftermath was swift and comprehensive. Within 48 hours, Chloe had been removed from all active projects pending executive review. Gregory faced an emergency board meeting where shareholders demanded explanations for the failed contract and stock price collapse. The board's internal investigation revealed not just the authentication failure, but a pattern of nepotistic hiring and inadequate succession planning that had exposed the company to serious legal and financial risks. Most satisfying was the industry response to my situation. Defense contractors who had watched my career over nearly 3 decades began reaching out with consulting opportunities and strategic partnerships. Rather than being seen as a liability, my dismissal was viewed as evidence of Carrington's poor judgment, and my expertise was more valued than ever. The call that changed my trajectory came from Marcus Levinson himself. "We've had time to assess everything," he said, "and our leadership team has made a decision. We'd like to retain you as an independent strategic advisor with full discretion and a compensation package that makes your Carrington salary look insignificant." It wasn't about rebuilding what I had lost. It was about recognition of what I had always been worth. Within a month, I had signed consulting agreements with 3 major defense contractors, established my own strategic advisory firm, and begun working on procurement projects that dwarfed anything I had handled at Carrington. The final chapter came 6 months later when Gregory was forced to resign following a shareholder revolt. The board's investigation had revealed that the Constellar Aerotech failure was just one example of a broader pattern of incompetent leadership and nepotistic decision-making. This pattern had cost the company millions in lost contracts and damaged relationships. Chloe quietly disappeared from the defense industry altogether. Her brief moment of manufactured success became a cautionary tale about the difference between inherited privilege and earned expertise. The LinkedIn profiles and press releases that had celebrated her innovative approach were deleted or edited to remove any reference to the failed contract. Today, I run Meyer Strategic Consulting from a corner office in Georgetown. I work with clients who value judgment over politics and expertise over connections. My income has tripled, my professional reputation has never been stronger, and I work only with organizations that understand the difference between leadership and management. The best part isn't the financial success or professional vindication. It's the knowledge that when they tried to erase my contributions and replace me with incompetence, the very systems I had built to protect them became the mechanism of their accountability. They thought silence was surrender, but silence was where the trap was hidden. And once it was sprung, I didn't need to lift a finger.